Hello and welcome to Early Years Workshop. The experts with me today are Jan de Biel, the Principal Officer for the Foundation Stage Profile from National Assessment Agency, Diane Rich from Rich Learning Opportunities, and today we've got Chris Ross, who's a practitioner from Evesham Nursery School. In today's programme, we're going to be talking about how and why children pose questions. So, where do we start?
Well, I think children are asking questions all the time. Children are natural explorers, and in their explorations of all the things they do, they're asking questions.
Questions aren't always said, but they're implied in what the child is actually doing. It's really important for practitioners to develop that skill of understanding when children are engaged in questioning, even if that questioning isn't actually articulated, by observing their levels of involvement, by looking at how they interact with other children, by looking at where their thinking is actually taking them.
It's easy to recognise the routine and procedure type questions they ask. Can I go to the toilet now? When is mummy coming to collect me? That kind of question. But what we're really thinking about is the questions that children ask when they're explorers of their world.
You're always asking questions at Evesham Nursery, aren't you?
We are, and you often find the children, like you say, are asking questions, but in many different ways.
Wow, Chris, weren't they enjoying themselves?
They
What's
are.
happening?
We have access to water at Evesham outside, which is a great resource. I mean, that particular day, that's what they'd chosen to do.
Yes. And you were there, Diane, weren't you?
I was. I was very fortunate on that day. What I was impressed with was the way children could make decisions for themselves, and you didn't mind them getting wet. They could be in control of the tap, the water could go wherever, it could go on their shoes, on their feet, get their socks wet, yes. But they were genuinely exploring water. What does it feel like? How can I use it? I think there's this lovely magicness of water that engages their emotions.
And they're so concentrated, aren't they?
The focus is very high in all these activities that they're choosing to do themselves.
That's what I really like. There was no time, really, I saw an adult intervene.
You don't actually see the adult there, but the role we were actually observing to see what they were using and how they were questioning themselves.
It would have been so easy to jump in and say, oh, yes. Well, let's see, how many spoonfuls can you use to fill this bucket? But you didn't, because it was his question and he was investigating it in his own way.
Quite a lot of confidence to be able to do that. And sometimes you feel as if you're not part of the action, if you're not there in it.
And again, the important thing for practitioners is to take those experiences and to say, how do we get the children to ask more questions of themselves about what's happening? And how do we then provide and scaffold and support that in their future learning experiences?
I think that's a learning process for the practitioner as well. Yeah. It is a definite skill that you do pick up. But I think from going from where they are, rather than you assuming what they know already, and that is done by sort of the observations.
Because you say, we're learning from the children's questions.
Exactly.
And that it's so important that you model that learning process.
I noticed that Jordan had a really good time with the watering cans. Right, let me just write this down in here.
Because there wasn't that many resources, but it's something that we could plan in next week. We could maybe get some gutters or...
We provide them with those resources.
Funnels out there.
Chris, do you always scaffold that next stage with putting out more equipment?
We do. It's not always about more resources. It's about looking at what the children are learning and putting resources out there that are going to further question them and provide problems for them to solve and work through.
So that we can be prepared for all sorts of ways the children might take it and where their questions might take it.
And that planning needs to be absolutely responsive to what happens. If you've planned the term in advance, you're not going to get that spontaneity of learning.
There's nothing of the children in there. If you
Exactly, and you can't have observed what those children's interests are, what their particular lines of inquiry, their lines of thought are at that moment.
It's about tuning in to the questions of children and being aware when they're not verbal questions, what is going on? What are they thinking?
It's the skill of the practitioner who can scaffold the direction of the learning, that the children still initiate it themselves. As when they have their own agendas that are being followed and supported, that's when really significant, fundamental learning takes place.
Water's coming through there.
It's tricky though, isn't it, when they're not actually saying anything. Well, they were quiet because they were so engrossed.
Absolutely.
But they were questioning through what they were doing. The girl was seeing how far water would travel. That was kind of her little investigation, really, her exploration. And yet there was a leak in the guttering. Now, we could have got very hung up on, wait, you can't do anything because the gutter's leaking.
Yes,
that didn't bother her.
But that led on to different learning.
Yeah, how far does water spread?
The potion boy, who was very absorbed with making potions, his involvement in that had spread to other children because as he was doing it, they were all contributing to his pot. And without saying anything, without articulating, they were just tipping their water in to help him make his potion because they were supporting his need to do that.
I was impressed as well how children seemed to understand the question another child was asking because they were supporting them without them necessarily articulating
they
that
were
was what they
completely
wanted.
tuned in, weren't they?
Absolutely.
You may observe a child thinking they're not actually doing anything. There may have been another child watching that and then they will have a go at it themselves the next day.
But they're asking a question then,
I was going to say, that's
yeah.
exactly the point where they're saying, why are they doing that? I wonder what will happen if I do
wonder
that.
what
I
will
wonder if I
happen
can do
next.
that.
Yeah.
If I was doing it, I might do it like this.
And I can do some now.
There was one child holding the bucket, there was one child pouring water in the top, there was one child going and getting the water from the tap. Really nothing had been said, but they were all completely tuned in to what they wanted to find out.
Ah, you've got some on shoe! Look, you've got some on my hand now. Me too! It's going to get overflow. I know.
It's making a prediction. I think it's going to overflow. And then they watched it. Or maybe it's a hypothesis. It's like a scientist. You make a statement, I am predicting this will happen, when actually they're asking a
I
question.
think it's going to overflow now. All of this water. Ah, no way!
From watching this, we then thought about a site that we have that has natural water flowing where they can go and explore it. Again, it's different.
Go over.
Is it going to go over?
No. Go under it.
What are you making? Potion.
Go water.
So they were able to explore, where in the world do I find water? It doesn't just come out of a tap.
Absolutely.
Is it the same? What does it feel like? Does it feel the same?
And because they go to that site quite often, because it's their forest school site, they'll know sometimes that it's cold, sometimes it's got rain coming down in it. It will change, won't it?
The flow, I mean, the day that we went was quite warm and the flow had slowed up, but other days they've been there and it's been quite a torrent coming across there. Water changes.
If the water you only ever see is the very clear water you wash your hands in, and then you have a very fixed notion of what water is. But actually, water that's full of mud is equally water, even though you can't see through it.
When does water become mud, and when is it no longer water? What colour is water? All of that's going on, but it's authentic, it's for a purpose.
Look.
Is this solid enough to put my foot on, or am I going to sink into it?
One of the children is starting to construct a dam using the stones, and then pulled in the practitioner to help her get the stones, very much on a supportive playmate type level, and said, no, that stone's not big enough. I mean, there was a...
But to say it's not
big enough. There's a huge amount of learning apparent in just that statement and in the context of that whole activity.
What kind of size do you want?
Thin one.
Thin one?
Yeah.
And developing a real language of water. It's a kind of a language of muddy water.
Yes.
And really understanding squelching and squirming around.
Because they're experiencing it and living it.
And the slidiness of water. So all of those real experiences, based on their interest, based on their explorations and questions, you've taken it on and you're giving them the real experience so that they can develop a language that means something for them.
Are these any good?
Oh! What happened there when you dropped it in the water?
You made a big splash.
Should we try it again?
Yeah.
It came from children's motivation. It's the children's idea to explore what water was and what it does and what it feels like and what it sounds like.
Well, that one made a really big one.
Why do you think this is going to make a
It's
big...
so big.
Should we try it?
Yeah.
It's having that confidence to be flexible and to let the children lead you by their learning, by their questions, rather than planning it out of existence yourself.
Yes. And that is one of the things that takes you into having a culture of questioning or a culture of exploring.
Yes.
The practitioners taking the lead from the children, using the questions of children to guide what they offer and provide and support and enable.
Yes. But this doesn't only happen in nurseries, does it? It happens in reception classes and beyond, we hope.
No, I think it's a very important point to make. This is equally what should be going on in reception classes.
Absolutely.
And reception practitioners are making judgments for the foundation stage profile. The majority of the evidence they will use will come from observing situations very similar to this.
We still need to come back into how we start this. If someone isn't there and isn't enabling children to ask these questions, how could they start to do this?
Make sure that there are things for children to ask questions about. And the most motivating thing for a child to ask a question about is the real world.
But I think an important part is listening to them.
Some practitioners keep a questions book to catch the questions, put them into a book. The children use them as inquiries. These are the questions we're asking.
Maybe the point is, to some questions there aren't answers, there are only more questions to extend it further.
And that's what an adult needs to provide and scaffold for the next stage. And that's all from Early Years Workshop today. I'd like to thank the panel, and especially Chris for allowing us into your excellent nursery. And I'd like to thank the nursery and reception children from Stanley Road Primary School in Worcester for the lovely artwork. Until next time, goodbye.